Welcome to the Land and Lead podcast, where we explore the real stories behind leadership transitions, the setbacks, strategies, wins, and moments of growth, all aimed at helping other leaders land well and lead effectively. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Elmore of Court Street Consulting. The Land and Lead podcast is supported by my advisory work at Court Street Consulting. I work with new presidents, executives with expanded mandates, and leaders facing complex change to help them think clearly, learn in real time, and make consequential decisions. If you're navigating complexity where the stakes feel high and the path isn't obvious, that's the work that I do. Today we're speaking with Charles Newnam, Vice President and General Manager of Leadership and Learning Strategy at Perceptyx. At Perceptyx, Charles leads the work helping organizations develop leaders, grow people, and change behaviors at scale to improve work experiences. An organization development expert, coach, and strategist, Charles is known for driving transformational impact across global enterprises. Prior to Perceptyx, Charles spent more than 12 years at Accenture, most recently as Strategy Principal Director in the Talent and Organization practice within Leadership and Culture. There, he delivered multi-million-dollar transformation programs for Fortune 100 clients, partnering with C-suite leaders on large-scale initiatives spanning culture, leadership alignment, team effectiveness, and inclusivity. Earlier in his career, Charles served 9 years in the United States Navy as a submarine warfare officer, completing multiple deployments and leading highly complex classified missions. He concluded his naval service as an assistant professor at the University of North Carolina, teaching naval engineering and naval weaponry, and was consistently ranked in the top 10% of the submarine fleet for leadership and technical excellence. Charles is the co-founder of Bell Institute and president of Wisdom for Humanity, or W4H, two nonprofit organizations focused on leadership development, service, and reflective growth. He holds graduate degrees from Columbia University and UNC Kenan-Flagler and lives with his family in the greater Chattanooga area. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh.
Certainly, yeah. We're excited to chat and excited about chatting about Perceptyx. And You've been there for how long?
About maybe 45 days, something like that.
45 days.
So,
Okay. Yeah. So it's new.
very new. Yeah, very new. I think I feel like I have my feet under me right now, so that's good. But it's like drinking from a fire hose to some degree.
Okay. So we'll take it from that perspective. The 45 days in, very new. So taking it from like thinking about the background I just shared, but can you elaborate a little bit on your background and how you landed at Perceptyx?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I guess the first thing, how I got interested in behavior change. I mean, I'll spare kind of the intro before university, but essentially got recruited out of college I was a first generation college student to go into the Navy. So I was doing electrical engineering. They were recruiting engineers. I got picked up. I ended up doing nuclear engineering and volunteered for the submarine force. I think in submarining, it was very interesting to me, how we would behave collectively. But also I did a lot of missions that were essentially watching things or watching people or listening for signals of interest or doing all sorts of interesting things with electronics. And I got really curious about behavior. Why do these people do what they do? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why, when I came back from sea after 6 months, did things seem so odd or unfamiliar from a social, interaction perspective? And so I was just really curious about that. Also, I watched leaders, some leaders could get their teams to do extraordinary things. And I saw just what I would call now just love, a lot of love and care for the team. And other leaders that there wasn't maybe some obvious reasons why they couldn't do the same. And there was obviously some leaders that were terrible, and it was very obvious as to why they were terrible. But I got really interested in leadership. And so I didn't want to be an engineer anymore. So I went to business school like every, I think, person does. And then I don't know what I want to do anymore. So I became a consultant. So that's kind of how that transition happened. But then I really fell in love with kind of the talent organization, with leadership, with culture, with behavior. All of those things were just super interesting to me. Ended up going back to school. And then, Perceptyx came along and they had this opportunity. They really wanted to break into the learning and development space. And so for me, I saw, my life mission, which is one that I want to change the culture to a more love and meaning filled one. And so I saw that. I saw the products that they have. And really, it's a way for me to do something in alignment with my life mission and do it at scale across the world. So I jumped in without hesitation, and that's what I'm doing now.
And so fascinating kind of perspective on being in your work context, in the Navy, at sea, seeing work dynamics, seeing leadership styles and having them come to life and be effective or not effective, and then using that as kind of a guiding principle to guide you to your roles, and Perceptyx kind of, you gravitated towards that. In that kind of journey of being, of gravitating towards Perceptyx, how did you like what did you recognize as kind of aligned with that approach or your orientation that you're kind of able
Mm,
to manifest now and kind of pursue that love orientation that you were just mentioning?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's kind of been a blend of like both of my worlds, like being an engineer, highly technical. I mean, operating a submarine, much less like trying to position a submarine to like fight it with the way that we do our tactics. I mean, it's a highly complex. It's a systems engineering, you know, problem that you have to be thinking about all the time, right? So if I lose hydraulic system here, what else goes down? If I lose steam here, what happens here? How
Sure.
does that affect the electrical plant? What electronics run off of that plant? Or like this bus, things like that. So you have to know all of these things. And so I think having a real technical background and needing to see proof and empirical evidence of things. And then I walked into like the org development space. And a lot of the questions I was asking, how do we know this works? Where did this framework come from? What are we ultimately trying to do? Like I was asking these kind of questions and I was like dissatisfied with the answers that I was getting, which sent me back to school. And then I met Perceptyx chief product officer back in like 2018. I think I just cold emailed him. I saw an article about a company that he was leading at the time. He was
Mm,
the CEO of another company. And we just started talking. And it was like he was trying to bring empirical, objective data for leaders to reflect on and change their behaviors. And I thought, wow, we could do this at scale. Like, how cool is that? And then we could show how behaviors change over time. And so for me, I think it was like sort of this. I tell people, I'm a recovering engineer, but it's like my drive for like empirical data and statistical significance combined with like my passion around like behavior and wanting to see systemic change not only in our organizations but in our communities. I think there's just like this sweet spot and convergence of all that coming together. This feels almost like it was like just the right timing. I'm the right person in the right role to just step into. So there was, I think that hopefully that answers your question. I think that's kind of what you're going after, but that's how I feel so like aligned and integrated with this role.
mm. Yeah, and it's kind of the idea of the gravitational pull, and it sounds like you were gravitating early, a while ago. You said 2018, right?
Hmm.
Towards
Hmm.
the chief product officer, and so that's coming up on almost 10 years
Yeah, yeah.
ago. So it's really interesting to see kind of that trajectory from
Hmm.
first contact to coming into
Yeah.
role and being 45 days in now. And thinking about kind of these early moments, can you tell us more about Perceptyx and the situation when you entered this new VP and GM role?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Perceptyx has been around for a long time. They've been around for 20, 23 years, maybe 24 years. Traditionally kind of in the survey business. So like, doing surveys and compiling that data and giving, people insights about their organizations. They are the global leader in, employee experience and like deep listening. So
Hmm.
just incredible that is what they have honed over years and they have kind of perfected it. And
Mm,
you think about from market leadership. Today how we're thinking about it is like, okay, so how do we actually put these things into action? How do we actually then change behaviors? Because we're able to provide deep insights and deep listening and do it with agentic AI now, and
mm,
it's almost seamless. Think about where the survey business is going. I think it's going to more just a conversational, like we could have, and AI can glean. Well, how is Charles feeling about his company? How is this? How do these things like how do we have a taxonomy behind that where it slots these things in? So I think that's the future of employee experience, employee listening. Well, the future's here. Like we're doing it. Like, Perceptyx is doing it.
mm,
But what it comes down to is like that. Well, where's that action? So action not only from like, okay, employee experience and engagement, but also from like learning. Almost every company that we have data on, they're showing that like a lot of reasons people are leaving is because of learning. And so, well, how can we take action on that? So like we have some really cool agentic AI that goes through and it says, hey, based on where you're at from our employee experience data, based on your 360 data, and based on where your organization is trying to go from a strategy, it actually just these behavioral science nudges, drops them in, and then it can pull links from your LMS or any content that you point it to and say, let me help you get better at what you're trying to get better at or what the company needs from a strategic perspective.
mm,
So anyways, all of these things are kind of like coming together. And ultimately, it's like now, can we get into if we can help people learn, if we can help people develop, and then if we can monitor behavior change on the back end of that and it readjusts itself all the way around to this loop, it's almost like you have a complete system, a full closed loop, that ability to drive change, organizational change in an enterprise. And you can do it with very little humans involved. And it works
mm,
24/7 and it's tailored to each individual of the organization too. So
mm.
like just this hyper personalization and all that is like, that's kind of where we're going. And I forget what your original question was, but that's that's where I landed. So I'm just really excited about completing that full cycle and being able to do organizational change and do it in a way with AI underneath it, and it's hyper personalized to the individuals too. I think that's been like a missing piece that we've been looking for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's right on as it relates to kind of what I was asking is, kind of about Perceptyx, but also kind of the situation when you entered. And it sounds like
Yeah,
the situation is this kind of moment of forward looking leveraging of technology to manifest kind of this new layer of learning, listening, engaging the workforce to
yeah,
kind of be able to step forward strategically. Is
yeah.
that right?
And maybe to come back, one more thing is like, yeah, I think what they were seeing and why they felt like they needed a net new role to be this general manager is because a lot of times in organizations we thought about employee experience belonged to like this one person or group, and we've got learning and development and like leadership development and talent development that all belongs in this bucket, and then we've got organizational change or change management or org effectiveness that belongs over here. Well, technology right now is blending the two or the three. The boundary between those parts of the business are being dissolved,
Hmm.
and so why can't I, as a user experience, or why shouldn't I expect this to all feel seamless to me? Because
Hmm.
organizations are changing, and we'll never have a slower pace of change than we do today. Again, da da da. That's true. People are wanting growth opportunities,
Hmm.
and they want to be engaged. And so why shouldn't all these systems talk to each other? Why shouldn't that guide the individual through all of that at one time? And so I think they started to see the dissolving of those boundaries, and they said, well, we need someone to really come in and lead our products with the view of how does all this connect, and how can we help people feel not only engaged but growing in their careers, developing and all those types of things. So that's why I stepped. That's why they were like, let's create this net new and have someone actually come in and lead it.
Okay, and so this is a new role for the organization for
That's
Perceptive.
correct. Yeah.
And so it's a new role. It's connecting across some dimensions of the organization. And so coming in 45 days, how were you conceptualizing it? How is the organization conceptualizing it? And how is that kind of meeting reality?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the organization and I am conceptualizing it in a similar way as I just explained. Right, we've got these products; they can do these things. We need someone to kind of lead the way,
Mm,
and then also we've got a foundation. But then, what's the future look like, and how
mm,
does this person have a vision to where we want to go in L&D in the future? I think all of there's good alignment right now.
mm,
I'd also say I'm 45 days in. We've yet to get into like the tactics and execution in a meaningful way.
mm.
And of course, all the differences show up in the execution. But so we'll figure that out. So I think there is some alignment there. And you had a second part to that question too. What was the second part?
Yeah, it's around this idea of the reality, right? So
Oh,
you have that alignment, and then kind of
yeah,
as you're in it, kind of where are you seeing how like okay, well this is what we thought, and maybe this needs to be updated
yeah,
so that and you can get alignment on that, but like because
yeah,
it's new, right? Of
yeah,
course, things in the abstract it's going to be different than
yeah.
what it exists when you walk in.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge for us and for me, frankly, like right now, is changing the mindset. I mean,
Mm,
we've got over 2 decades of being an employee experience company, and we're still an employee experience company. We're the best in the world at it. So like, of course, we're going to continue to do that. I think then it's like, how do we shift to be a employee experience and
mm,
something else? And so we are going through our own organizational transformation at the same time.
mm,
And we drink our own champagne, right? We use our own tools to
mm,
help with that. So I think it's a mindset shift. And so I get into like these prep calls with customers and things like that. And I still have the fresh eyes. I'm like, oh, like we're still viewing ourselves through like this particular lens. Like I'm almost like, no, 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 stop. It's like, let's come at it from this angle. And then I'm seeing some of the light bulbs, turn on, and like, oh, like when we truly do embrace it from this, and it does change the way we talk, it does change the way we position, things like that. So I think my work is kind of being the catalyst for that organizational change and leading the way.
mm.
And I think organizationally our biggest challenge is going to be like truly like embodying that new mindset or that new direction.
And you have a background in organization development. You're coming from, in a consulting firm. How are you now kind of leading the change that you want to see?
Yeah. I guess the first thing I'm doing is I'm being the change I wanna see, in the organization. So
Mm,
I kind of philosophically believe that if you want anything to change in your life or organization, it starts in here. And so I'm trying to be an example. If that means that, I got to build the first set of slides out to talk about it one way, like I'll do it, and like say, "Hey, do it like this," or, "Hey, come to this meeting with me and listen to me talk about it." And, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to say everything right and all that kind of stuff too. But I think that's kind of one thing. So I'm being the change, I want to see in the organization. I think the second thing is I've got kind of like when I think about mine, it's like a two-pronged approach. Like one is setting up the systems inside of the organization. So, how are we preparing like the sales reps to go and have conversations with, customers about these things? How are they thinking about pricing it? What's the value case for the customers as well, right? 'Cause it's like, let's
mm,
show an ROI. Let's be really diligent about the way that we're doing that and how we're positioning these value cases. Well, then if we're going to demo our products, like we've got a lot of smart people, we can use these products in many different ways, but we want to demo it in a specific way that talks to the value case that the customer is interested in solving, right?
mhm,
And so it's like, sorry, so getting them, and then we're going to get customer feedback about stuff. So like, okay, how do we have to go back to product? So anyways, there's all of these things that could be systematized um, into the organization and start pushing us toward that future where we want to go. And so that's one level that I'm trying to get set up right now, and maybe it's actually three levels. So that's one. Maybe that's in the middle. The second thing is like tactical. Like I'm just jumping right into the customer calls, listening, guiding teams, rolling up my sleeves, getting dirty like with
mm,
the teams. And I think one that helps me learn. Like I'm learning. Okay, oh yeah, like I see it like that. Or, oh, I see why why this is a challenge, or why this is a way that we're used to talking about something.
mhm,
And so that's helping me a lot, and that's also part of me maybe just being the change too. And then the third thing is the higher level strategy. So then once we get some of those systems in place, we see that that's working. We're solving customer outcomes, we're solving business problems. Okay, great, check. Now, like, what are we doing in a 2 years time, right? So what's that higher level strategy? What's the vision? Who do we want to be in the L&D market? Do we want to try to even make a whole new category? Are we even L&D anymore once we start to blend these things together? Is there something totally net new? And
mm.
so, I don't know. And that's exciting to me. So I'm trying to do all three of those right now. I'd say the majority of my time is certainly focused on the setting up systems and then the tactical stuff today.
Mm.
So, but I expect that to shift over time where I'm spending a bit more time on strategy and driving that vision.
Super helpful to think about this kind of idea of like the levels, right? Like what and what level you're operating at. So giving it that definition can help you decide, at where are you intervening, as you would say in
Yep.
OD or organization
Yeah.
development language, and then kind of expanding on strategies, right? So that's kind of how you're navigating and helping the system update, or at the team level and the tactics, or at the kind of process level or vision level. But for yourself, as somebody coming into a new role 45 days in, what strategies are helping you navigate the transition?
What strategies are helping me? I to some degree, it's almost like asking a fish what water is, because I think I kind of almost intuitively do some things, but that's a good reflection point. One is like I tend to be like I'm a very disciplined person, and I don't say that because I just think that. I've been told that by many people.
Mm,
I've been told that by Olympic athletes. So, and that kind of shocked me when I heard that actually. So to me, it's like I'm going to find what works and I'm going to consistently do it day over day until I see the feedback loop come back to completion. And then I'll make a tweak and then we'll keep driving. So for me, it's like staying very disciplined. So
mm,
like, I think this is going to work. I'm going to give it time to test it. What does that look like? What does success look like? What's the early indicators and how am I going to pivot? So I think like that. I think the second thing is prioritization. So, like I said, it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I wouldn't say I'm a ruthless prioritizer, but if I don't have a sense of like what are the top three things that I must get done this week, or I will have failed myself. If I don't have a sense of what those are, I'm kind of lost in the wind a little bit, and I need to
mm,
reground and kind of come back to like what am I ultimately trying to do. And
right.
so at any point in time, I understand what my top three things are that need my focus.
Mm.
And then I don't forget about like the flywheels or the systems that I'm trying to get going. And am I putting a little bit of energy on those? I don't have to put a lot, but they need a little bit so that they can keep turning. And
Mm.
eventually they'll spin fast. But yeah, those are probably that. And then I'd say taking care of your body. Like I know there's probably some other leaders out here that are going to listen to this. Sleep and eat healthy and exercise. It'll change your life. So if you're not doing that, a lot of people sometimes say, "How do you have the time to do that?" And I look at them and say, "How do you have the time not to do that?" Like it blows my mind. But yeah, sleep, eat it well, drink water, and exercise.
It's good. It's good advice. It's not. It's true. It's not always easy to get those things done.
Sure.
Um, so thinking about, I want to zoom in on that iterativeness, right? Where you said, or and even the idea of kind of asking a fish what water is, um,
Hmm.
and how you're kind of living, breathing this kind of like stepwise, everyday updating. Do you have any examples of something that you've made an update to that maybe was your approach when you're at previous organizations, previous roles? You've come into this role and you see maybe a work style, work practice that you've leaned on in the past, but maybe just doesn't fit as well here?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, I think I got into a point at Accenture, being a principal director there in the strategy practice. I was getting pulled in as a subject matter expert on a lot of conversations,
Mm.
um, and so and in a good way, just to become, I had a pretty high like bill rate, and so it wasn't like people didn't they wanted me around, but not too long, right? So like you kind of had to get in, you had to do something smart, add some value, and then you had to get out, and so I was very used to kind of coming in, listening for a little bit. Here's the three things I think you should do. If you need some support along the way, great. But then I kind of fade back out, right?
Mhm.
Uh, they try those things, come back in a month. Hey, we tried your things. Here's what we're seeing. What do you think? Maybe try this, do that, whatever. So I was kind of very kind of more of like a peanut butter spread across my teams and my accounts and things like that. So we're here, I cannot take that posture. Like, it cannot. There is no one's done this before here. It's not like I have, five project managers that are running, their own projects in the day to day and stuff like that. Like, I am the day to day. I am like with the same team every day, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, different customers, different, account managers, stuff like that. But my core team is the same team.
Mm.
And so I think what's required of this role is to be much more directive and much more, working through that implementation of what we're trying to do, and a lot more guidance than I'm was used to. But I'm also comfortable flexing into that too.
Mhm.
So I think that's been one thing that's been a bit of a shift, but a welcome shift. Like it's not been hard necessarily, just different than I was operating after I left Accenture.
Mhm. And so kind of, get that backward facing look and then looking forward, what are you focusing on to help you in your transition kind of beyond 45 days?
Like, are you asking that more from like, what am I specifically doing to keep me focused beyond 45 days or?
What do you see? You're 45 days in, and you've got this kind of reflective piece of, I've had to maybe change my posture here, and this is a new
No.
role, and looking ahead, I'm going to be here for a period of time, of course, and
Mhm,
working through things, and that's part of the transition. What are you anticipating as it relates to kind of you to be successful in that transition? What are you
mhm.
kind of aiming to accomplish or achieve?
Well, one is kind of planning,
Mm.
and like looking at like, what do I hope to see and when?
Mhm.
The week I started, I hammered out a 4 or 5 page, 100-day plan. And
Mhm.
this is what I want to do. I've updated it a few times,
Mhm.
since then. And I'm kind of right in the middle of it. And, I mean, more or less on track with what I kind of wanted to do. And so, one of the things coming up in the next couple of weeks is probably going to be building a roadmap with my team. Where do
Mhm.
we want to be? What do we want to have out there? And I'm learning of like, okay, I'm starting to see, okay, we got some gaps, here and there, like either it's capability or capacity gaps. And so, is that really going to be a problem? Like, I don't know, but let me keep a watch on that.
Mhm.
And so I think I'm looking at that, and I think what I'm eager to understand in the immediate future are these systems that I'm putting in place, are they working? Are we getting the early signal indicators that we wanted? Or is there more, experimentation that needs to take place? And so kind of guiding that in, and then it'll become, fine tuning. But I'm looking at some more, maybe some of the step changes, like what are those potentially going to be in the next, 45 days to 3 months? And then, here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be putting together a North Star for the business unit. And I'd love for, me to be able to shift to, maybe 20 or 30% of my time, focused on that. And how are we driving that, developing new product and things, and kind of handling, maybe 50% of my time in front of customers. And then the rest is going to be kind of on maintaining those flywheels rolling and, removing blockers and things like that. So I think for me, it's just maybe I'm answering your question kind of implicitly, but it's having an idea of where you want to be, and then kind of measuring yourself and reflecting on, am I actually doing what I have said that I want to do? And if not, why? And if you don't have a good reason, then it probably requires some more reflection or digging around what's going on,
And in reflecting on that, what's kind of the number one thing that you want to keep your finger on the pulse of to be able to kind of help make all of that successful?
Number one thing. That's a great question. I think belief is probably the number one thing I want to keep pulse on. Like, do we believe that it's possible for us to be the best in the world at this stuff? And I certainly believe that. And I want to keep the pulse on that, because if once we lose the belief, then it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I'm eager to put some big wins on the board, say, hey, look, everyone, this works. We can do this. And so once we start doing that, I think it's just going to keep putting it into that. There's an old like Christmas movie, I think, about like Santa Claus's meter on his sleigh or whatever. And so it's like, if we it's kind of think of the same way, the more belief and the more evidence that we have on the outside that this is working, I think it's just going to, be fuel in the rocket ship, and we'll just continue to go. So I think that's what I want to keep. That's what I ultimately want to keep the pulse on. Because if we're not believing, then I've got some more work to do and some convincing. So yeah.
Yeah. Very good. And, kind of coming up to the end of the conversation here, what advice would you share with leaders currently entering a new high stakes role?
Yeah, I think my advice, I have something I would say. It might very well be just a projection. I'd say the first thing is like do whatever works best for you. That's probably the first thing. But then what I do, I stay grounded and I stay calm. I know what my purpose is. I know I've at least convinced myself that I know why I'm on the earth. And I'm going to keep marching after that no matter what, literally no matter what. I don't, the consequences, good or bad, don't matter to me. What matters to me is if I'm doing the work I feel like I'm been put here to do. So I don't know if everyone needs to find that and do it. Like I said, do whatever works for you. But I get a lot of peace and a lot of groundedness from just anchoring back to that, being like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's all I can ever ask of myself.
You might say that you have belief,
Yeah,
right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, Charles, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. Is there anything that you'd like to share that's coming up for you or Perceptyx?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share one of my nonprofits that I lead, Wisdom for Humanity. We've got 2 things coming up this year. I'll be going to Peru with a group to Machu Picchu. So if you're interested in doing some business development, personal development, professional development, and spirituality, like come on down to Peru. We'll be doing some stuff there. I have another friend, dear friend, that's leading a group in Greece in a different week in September. So if you're interested in any of those, going to Delphi, Greece, or going to Machu Picchu, let me know. I'd love to consider bringing you along for the ride for that. And then with Perceptyx, we've got a pretty big conference coming up in May. I believe it's like the second week of May. But if you're interested in finding more about us or about me and like what I think we're doing in the world, and we're changing the world, we're impacting communities, I think that it'd be great to see you out in Chicago and come get to know us a little more. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out on the website or get in touch with me and I can point you in the right direction. So those are kind of 2 things that are on top of mind that we'll be up to in the future.
Amazing. Well, Charles, thanks again for sharing your wisdom, all your thoughts. 45 days in, super powerful moment, and really great to hear your present state of things.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you bringing me on.
Certainly. The Land and Lead podcast is supported by my advisory work at Court Street Consulting. I work with presidents, executives with expanded mandates, and leaders facing complex change to help them think clearly, learn in real time, and make consequential decisions. If you're navigating complexity where the stakes feel high and the path isn't obvious, that's the work that I do. Thanks so much for listening to the Land and Lead podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Elmore. Tune in next time for more stories from leaders navigating high-stakes role transitions.